ahead, Christina.
Yes, you are live.
All right. Everybody, welcome to the Finance Committee's regular meeting for April 26, 2021. It's 4 p.m. Christina, do you need to make an announcement?
I do. I will read the meeting procedures for this meeting. The procedures adopted for this meeting meet or exceed the standards set forth in Governor Newsom's Order N-25-20, which allows public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. At this time, I will conduct roll, and I will ask the chair to recognize me afterward to confirm certain matters of the record. Vice Chair Perkins? Yep. And Chair Zafar?
Here.
Thank you.
And now recognizing Christina again.
Based on the responses to roll call, the record should reflect that all committee members can hear the proceedings clearly. And if there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each committee member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that the persons representing themselves to be council members are in fact council members.
Yes.
Thank you. Seeing no objection, I will turn the meeting back over to the chair with a reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Great, thank you. Next, item number 2 is public comment. Do we have anybody?
I did not receive any written comment, and it does not appear that we have any members of the public in the audience at this time.
All right, give it a second and then we close public comment. All right, public comment is closed. Approval of minutes, item number 3.1, Finance Committee regular meeting minutes from March 8, 2021. All right, I will second. Moved and approved. Item number 4, unfinished business. We have none. Item number 5, new business, 5.1. Proposed appropriation of $140,000 from Fund 201, Planning Cost Recovery Fees, and $129,679 from General Fund to Fund CIP 969003 for consultant contract to prepare updates to the housing element, related general plan elements, environmental impact report, climate action plan, and necessary zoning ordinance revisions. Staff report by Lauren Barr, Planning Division Manager. Over to you, Lauren.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon, council members, staff. As you're aware, we are in the process of kicking off our housing element and general plan update. Along with that, we'll be updating several other support documents such as the climate action plan, and we will be doing an environmental impact report for the general plan update. In February, we released an RFP for consultant services to help us get through this rather extensive process. It's about almost a 2-year process that we're getting ready to undertake. And we're looking to fund the contract from our consultant, or excuse me, the contract or the RFP period closed in April, and now we're moving forward with a consultant contract. We had established funding sources with the CIP. We also had a grant award of $300,000 from the state to help with our general plan update. But we still have a gap that we need to close in terms of funding. And so the allocation today is intended to close that funding. We're looking for $140,000 from the 201 recovery fees, and then an additional general fund allocation of 160, excuse me, I gotta find my notes, sorry, 129,679 for a total of just under $1.1 million for the entire contract. There's a table on the second page of the staff report that breaks down the funding sources for the contract. And I should also mention that the recovery fees are replenished on a regular basis. So we will be building that fund back up and can return fees back to the general fund. So it's a way of basically reimbursing the general fund for essentially a loan. So right now we're looking to move forward with that particular allocation, and I'm here to answer any other questions you might have.
If I can add briefly, we also have a grant that we received for the Crow Canyon specific plan, the design objective design standards, and for our ADU standards that we're developing now. And so we should be receiving that reimbursement in the very near term too. And that's about $300,000, Lauren.
$310,000.
So when those funds should be coming in very shortly. And so those also could return the payment to the general fund very quickly.
The ADU plan one is just underway, but the about 210,000 or so from the Crow Canyon plan will be coming back sooner than later.
I have no questions.
I have no questions either, except do we approve this or do we send it over to council?
You would recommend it to council. We're going to proceed with a resolution at council.
Okay.
I recommend we move it to the city council.
I will second your recommendation.
Is it on tomorrow night's agenda?
No, it'll be the following meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Done with this item. Thank you so much, Lauren.
Thank you.
Item number 5.2, proposed storm weather program budget for fiscal year 2021-22. Staff report by Robin Bartlett, Engineering Division Manager.
Good afternoon, Finance Committee. I'd just like to share a couple of slides related to this item. Hopefully you can see that. So this is just our budget for the next 5 years. And I guess there's a little bit of good news I'll start out with is that we're still showing that we're in the black next year. Last year we had anticipated that we'd be completely out of funds, so we're limping along for one more year. That being said, thereafter, as we've previously predicted, we start requiring more and more general fund allocation in order to being able to maintain our basic services related to stormwater. Again, already the administrative overhead has been stripped out of this fund, so the NPDS really isn't contributing its fair share to our overhead. And all of this budget is built around our $35 ERU rate. That's the assessment we charge for the stormwater maintenance activities. That $35 number has been capped and been charged for what I think is now 28 years. So it's been a long running maximum at $35. The budget assumes typical rate increases. They're fairly modest. Some things go up more than others. Currently, we're the next program budget won't change at all. But everything else we've applied typical inflators. So that's the financial outlook for the NPDS program. I'd also like to touch base a little bit on the next municipal regional permit. So we're currently operating under what's commonly referred to as MRP 2.0. That's the municipal regional permit that applies to the entire Bay Area. That permit has expired, although we're still operating under its condition. The next permit is being formulated and moving forward. It should go into place next year. So the new permit has a lot of new provisions, some of which I'm highlighting here. But I think the most significant impact to San Ramon is going to be through new requirements to green infrastructure. As you may recall, we completed a green infrastructure plan recently. Unfortunately, the regional board's really not waiting for the ink to dry on those plans before kind of dismissing them and implementing new requirements under the assumption that we're not moving ahead rapidly enough with the green infrastructure requirements. So the current draft of the new permit has two provisions in it that are potentially very impactful to us. One is a requirement that when streets are reconstructed, that the green infrastructure, which is basically treatment of the runoff from the street, be included with the new street, or that some offsetting area is treated. So by reconstruction, they basically mean if you're laying down an asphalt overlay or inlay, they would then require you to do the green infrastructure, these bioswale type treatments. The other provision is that the city treat a minimum of 10 acres of impervious surface. Right now, the language would suggest that's in addition to whatever you have to treat with your streets. So to put that into perspective, we have a design that we did for a portion of Old Crow Canyon Road, and we haven't implemented it because of some property line issues, but the engineer's estimate of that came in at around $400,000 per acre had we put that treatment into effect. So if you go through and do all the math and look at the streets that we treated, that if we had to treat all the streets that we paved last year, it would have cost us between about $3 to $5 million to treat those streets. So that effectively wipes out all the benefit that we saw from the SB1 improvements a few years back, and would more or less mean that once every 4 or 5 years, we would have to devote all of our pavement dollars to doing green infrastructure and do zero paving. So that's a very big hit if that goes through as is. In terms of the 10 acres of impervious surface, if that goes through, then at least for this permit cycle, we'll probably be okay. There's areas that we think that we can readily do some treatment by modifying some of our local detention basin, and also just implementing the green infrastructure plan as it was written and as it was intended, and in cooperation with redevelopment and sharing the burden more or less as areas are redeveloped, we'd probably be able to meet that provision.
So Robin, what exactly is green infrastructure?
So green infrastructure is really just a term that's used to describe treatment methods where the stormwater runoff from streets is run through a treatment device. That treatment device is most typically a bioswale. So the water runs into this area where the soils have been replaced with a imported soil material, basically a very sandy, high quality planting material, which allows the water to percolate through at a rate that is carefully judged to allow its treatment as well as its detention. The plants in the soil then absorb some of the pollutants that are in the stormwater runoff, and then it continues on to the storm drain system. So that is go ahead.
And the advantage of this is what outcome is the advantage?
The outcome that the regional board is aiming for with these is twofold. One, that the pollutants that are in the stormwater runoff, which is basically anything that was on the street when it rained, it can include oil, grease. It could also include lead, mercury, things that are in the rainwater itself, which is where some of the mercury concerns come from. And it will remove those from the stormwater before discharging them to the creeks and ultimately to the bay. Similarly, it will slow down the rate of runoff so that you don't get this high at peak flows and you have less erosion and you have a more natural runoff pattern.
Thank you so much for explaining that.
This applies to places like San Francisco, right?
This will apply to everyone in the Bay Area. And as horrific as I think the financial burdens could be to San Ramon, I really can't imagine how some other cities will be able to deal with this. Now, San Francisco, of course, has a very strange situation that they have combined sewer system. So they actually have a whole different set of regulations that apply to them.
Okay, and so, but this applies to all 100 and some cities throughout the Bay Area, is that right?
Yes, this will apply to everyone. So hopefully that works in our advantage. Where I live in Oakland, I can't imagine how this would be implemented. It is simply infeasible in any hillside area, in any area with narrow streets, and particularly with fire concerns that come with those narrow streets, nor is it readily implementable in areas of generally older infrastructure without massive impacts, unless you're redeveloping. And then, of course, you have a lot more opportunity. Give you a sense of some of the other things that are in the new permit. It will require that the storm drain system be mapped and updated and actually made available to the public. We're well ahead of the game in that. And in fact, we're working on a system to improve our infrastructure mapping. That we have a grant to do that through the PTAP, and that'll actually end up being included in our Street Saver module. There's also new provisions to require trash interception on private property prior to its discharge to our system. That'll likely require a update to our stormwater ordinance. That shouldn't be too bad, but basically it'll mean a pass down to private property, particularly commercial areas. There's also a requirement reducing the triggering threshold for C3. That's essentially the private version of green infrastructure. And that'll then be triggered by projects that are down to 5,000 square feet. Again, that won't be a huge burden, I think, to development in the city, most of which is larger than that. There's new monitoring and reporting requirements. So again, there'll be more burden on staff and on the Clean Water Program to be reporting more and more things. There's some new provisions related to firefighting, and this has caused a lot of angst and brought a lot of probably negative attention to the regional board. There's requirements that pertain to firefighting specifically related to the use of foams, but also generally requiring them to somehow implement some pollution prevention provisions while they're trying to fight a fire. The other thing that's a little strange about that is it is written into our permit, but of course, we, like actually most jurisdictions in the Bay Area, have a separate political district for firefighting, and those districts are not permittees. So I'm not exactly sure how this is even legally applicable to us, but I think it sheds light on how they think about things. There's also some new provisions related to homelessness that require various actions, in part to prevent and document pollution related to homelessness. But again, it's raised some concerns about really criminalizing homelessness and how you would possibly implement provisions and some of the sanctions that go with them to people who are homeless. So that's MRP 3.0 in a nutshell. Again, they're still in the process of refining this. They're in the process of receiving a lot of comments about this. So hopefully some of these requirements will be modified to be more implementable, but that remains to be seen. And of course, I'll be updating the entire council as we get more information about MRP 3.0. Are there any other comments or questions?
Just very interesting.
I'm so frustrated by the this whole process of directing agencies to do these things with no opportunity for funding for these things. You know, we tried a countywide increase in our ERU with no success, and I see no opportunity for increasing it in the near future. But yet we'll have to meet these requirements.
But if they're taking comments, could we put in our comments and raise, you know, the burden it will have on cities?
Yes, we have already provided them with comment letters to that effect. As the process moves forward, we will continue to comment. There has also been some bills being put forward in the assembly, which seemed to encourage the regional board to be even stricter. And so we provided comment on that. I understand that some action has moved forward on those assembly bills and that they have been somewhat diluted, and that at least in the assembly, the comment seemed to be that it's all well and fine to be asking for these things, but without the financing to go along with it, that was going to be a problem, and that the real issue really was financing. Unfortunately, that assembly bill did not include any financing, and so it's left us more or less in the same position we've always been in.
Have you seen this in any other regions in California besides the Bay Area?
I have not looked at the permits that are in other regions, and they have different permitting cycles. But it's my understanding this is not too different from what has been required or will be required in other regions.
Great. If we don't have any other questions, do we just recommend that we accept the report?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Robin.
Thank you.
Over to the council.
Right. So next we move on to 5.3. Review of reserve study and preliminary fiscal year 21-22 operating and capital budgets for landscaping and lighting district number 1984-1. Report by Sean Anderson, Public Services Program Manager.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen real quick.
Hi, Sean.
Hi. Can everyone see that?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Okay, today I'm here to talk about the Landscape and Lighting District 1984-1, the FY 21-22 Reserve Study and Operating Budget. Landscape and Lighting District, here are some facts. The district was formed in 1984. Its annual property owner assessments fund maintenance of public landscaping, lighting, and other amenities. There are 19 separate zones, 2 citywide zones, and 17 special zones. And the district is reestablished each year by council action. And here's just an overview of where all the zones are, just so everyone knows. You can see the section that's in gray, that's Doherty Valley.
So pretty much all of San Ramon except Doherty Valley?
Correct, correct. Like all the white that you see, that's all citywide and citywide landscape. And then all the numbers correspond to all the different zones. Okay. Here's a summary of some of the projects we did last year, some befores and after pictures. This is citywide lighting. This is on the corner of Alcosta and I believe West Side Drive. That's the before and after, the pole painting. Citywide landscaping, this is Deerwood Road on the center median. We went through and ripped out all the plant material, got rid of the trees, put new plant material, redid the irrigation and mulch. Here's Old Ranch Road. This one took a little longer. The irrigation was very, very old, and it was actually the old spaghetti tubing. We switched all this to bubblers and replanted this. Obviously, here's Canyon Lakes. Here was the fountain, and here's how beautiful it looks now without the fountain.
It is looking beautiful, I
Yeah,
have to
it
say.
looks very, very nice. Here's Summerwood Loop along Iron Horse Trail. You can tell what it looked like before. That's what it looks like now. This is West Branch. This is along Crow Canyon Road on the north side of the road between curb and sidewalk. And we're actually doing the south side of the road right now. We just haven't mulched it yet, so it wouldn't look good in the picture. Here's Bent Creek, the turf removals that we've been talking about for a while. We've done 5 corners on Old Ranch Road that the turf is gone, redid the irrigation and planted. This is Old Ranch Estates. Once again, this is along Old Ranch Road. This is another one that the irrigation was beyond repairable. We went through and redid all of the irrigation, then we planted ground cover. Once this all fills in, this will be really nice between sidewalk and the road. Village Parkway, more turf removals. This is right across from Village Green Park. This is Crown Ridge. This is an area on San Ramon Valley Boulevard. It's kind of looked, this little section right here with the plant material didn't really grow. We ripped it all out and we planted acacia that's going to grow all and fill all this in eventually. So the reason we do the reserve study is to assess adequacies of funds over a 30-year period. This is for renovations, replacements, emergency repairs, and unforeseen circumstances. Sorry. So there's a maximum rate and assessment rate. Maximum rate is basically not to exceed assessment amount voted on and approved by property owners for each zone, based on improvements to be maintained and replaced, renovated. The actual assessment may be less. Assessment rates are rate to be levied. Actual assessments charged annually to property owners on their property tax bills. That assessments may increase or decrease by city council action up to the maximum assessment rate. Maximum assessment rate, citywide zone 1 and 2, city may increase maximum annual based on CPI up to 2% per property owner's approval. Ballot was in 2006. Special zones 3 through 12, maximum rate set by property owner, balloting in 1997. Zone 5 by ballot election in July 1997. Increase to these zones or would require property owner ballot approval. Special zones 13 through 17, established after 1997. Maximum rates established through property owners balloting at time of creation. Increase would require property owner ballot approval. Special zones 18 and 19, maximum rates established through property owner balloting at time of creation. Property owners approved maximum rate increase up to 2% annual based on CPI. So some recommended, staff is recommending some increases. Citywide lighting, there's approximately 3,900 street lights. Zone 2, citywide landscape, it's a landscaping in the public right of way. 2006 property owners approval ballot allows us to go up to 2%. This year, the CPI for February of 2021 was 1.6%. So we're increasing the maximum rate was increased by 52 cents for zone 1 and $1.13 for zone 2 for a total of $1.65 per unit. Other recommendations for increases, some special zones. Deerwood zone 8, like to increase from $95 to $100. Crown Ridge zone 13 increase from $705 to $730. 4 Oaks zone 14 increased from $165 to $175. And Henry Ranch zone 17 increased from $200 to $225. Glass House allows for up to 2% CPI. Once again, it was 1.6% in February of 21. So the increase per parcel is $14,890.59. Some recommended decreases. Canyon Lake zone 3, we're going to decrease from 90 to 80. Old Ranch Estates zone 10 decrease from 350 to 320. And there'll be no changes in assessments for citywide lighting, zone 1, special zones 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11, 15, 16, 18, and 19. Here's some upcoming projects that we plan to do. Go ahead, Scott.
Increase zone 1 by the 1.6%.
We increased zone 1 the maximum rate, but we did not increase the assessment rate. We didn't need to increase the assessment rate this year due to projects and maintenance costs. We have a pretty good reserve in zone 1.
Ah, okay. You raised the cap, but didn't raise the assessment.
Correct.
Not that.
Correct.
Yeah, I think our policy in the recent past has been to always increase the cap, but which gives us some headroom should we come across some problems.
Correct.
So we raise the cap every year, but not always the assessment. I got it. Thank you.
Thanks. So here's some upcoming projects for next year in the capital improvement projects. Again, we're going to do some more citywide pole painting. As you can see, some of these are looking pretty bad. Citywide lighting, another CIP project we're going to do this year, removal of in-pavement lighting systems and replaced with rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And then another big one is another CIP for zone 1. It's to get the preliminary plans ready to go for the bridge at Bollinger Canyon Road. And then some more citywide landscape that we're looking at. We're looking at Alcosta below the hospital. We need to revamp the irrigation. We're actually going to take out all the spray heads and put in bubblers per plant and replant this thing and mulch it. The biggest problem we've always had is the spray heads ends up flooding the bottom half of Alcosta. So we're going to switch over to bubblers so it's just per plant. And then we're going to do another section on Old Ranch Road, Center Median. Canyon Lakes, we're going to, Canyon Lakes, come on. There we go. Canyon Lakes, Crow Canyon Road. We're going to do some more tree removals up on the hillside and then replant. Bollinger Canyon Road on the north side. We have a couple more trees that are failing and we're going to remove those and possibly replant those also. Summerwood Loop, asphalt pathway repairs. This is kind of an ongoing thing, but we're going to do some more repairs this year. West Branch, we're going to do some more landscaping behind sidewalk between residents and the sound wall and the sidewalk along Crow Canyon Road. We've done everything from sidewalk to the road. So we're going to do the upper half. This is on the north side of Crow. Bank Creek, we're going to finally remove the bollards. I know we've talked about it for years. We've actually been in contact with some HOAs already in the Bank Creek area and talked to them about what they'd like to do. And there's a lot of options we're looking at. So we kind of started talking about it now. So when it's time, everybody is pretty clear on what they want to do and how they want to move forward. But we're at that point where we don't have any replacement parts, and you can see the one in the middle is pretty cracked up because we don't have anything left to replace these because they're outdated.
So are they actually functional? And
yeah, they actually work. I think the one in the center, I don't think it might still work, but that was pretty recent that one got destroyed. That's along Austin Creek.
So are you thinking of replacing it with lighting, or just?
So we actually talked to some residents. They're talking about some like the bollards, some would like to decrease the amount of bollards, like half, because there's some areas that just have too many bollards in one spot. And they can do it, they go LED and they could probably do less and get the same, the wow factor. Some residents were actually talking about doing some more uplighting. So it lights up more of the sound wall and the trees and their signs and things like that, more than seeing the bollards as they're coming down. So like I said, we just started talking to residents, so we'll know more soon.
Yeah. And solar, I would imagine solar would be an option as you're looking through this, right?
It is an option. The only thing is where to put the solar panel because there's a lot of shade there. And to keep these things running, I'm just afraid the trees, as they get larger, it may cover, because a lot of times you'll see bollard lights that actually has the solar on the top of the bollard. And there's a lot of shade there. So I'm just afraid that only partial, some of them will work, some of them won't. But I think just switching from this old, bulbs to LED will be a big, big difference as far as costs. And then we're looking at more landscape renovations. This is more turf areas along Doherty Road. We're looking at removing all that, and then we'll just have along the creek left to do. Deerwood Road, Deerwood Drive, I'm sorry. We have planned on mulching this. We planted this several years ago and it's filling in really nice. We just plan on putting a fresh coat of mulch on it to just make it pop. Old Ranch Estates, we did everything from sidewalk to the road. Now we're looking at back of sidewalk just below Summit View Park. Once again, the irrigation is unrepairable. So we'll go through and replace all the irrigation and repair it. Shavano Way, Village Parkway, we did all the turf removal along Village Parkway. Now we're going to go, there's one little section on Shavano on both sides of the road that we would like to take out and plant and redo the irrigation there. Crown Ridge, this is on West Side Drive. This has been, this is some honeysuckle that just is really never filled in. And it's overhead sprays and it's just, I think we can make it look very nice. So we're going to go through again and remove all the overhead sprays and run bubblers and make this more of a formal planted area. So when people drive down and pull into their neighborhoods in Crown Ridge, they can see a real wow factor of the new planting. Old Ranch Summit, we're looking at some detention basin upgrade and some landscape renovation. Once again, this is on Old Ranch Road, back of sidewalk. And then last but not least, Glass House. We're going to go through and basically freshen this up. We're going to do new plants, to the old specifications, but we're going to put some new plant material in, redo all the pathways, get it back to where it was. There's no scheduled capital improvements for Vista San Ramon Zone 4, Country View Zone 9, El Nido Zone 12, Fort Oaks Zone 14, Thomas Ranch Zone 16, and Henry Ranch Zone 17. All these zones will just have continuum annual operating and maintenance. Some underfunded special zones. Vista San Ramon, their max assessment rate is $180. If you look at the reserve study, it actually goes negative in 25-26. West Branch Zone 6, their maximum assessment is $380. It goes negative in 24-25. We actually have started talking to West Branch already. We talked to Trevari the other day. Their board had talked about, showed them the reserve study and the things that may need to happen. Four Oaks, this one's out of ways, but I put it on here because it's within the 10 years. It's Zone 14, maximum assessment rate is 175. It goes negative in 29-30. So as I said, public outreach to 4, 6, and 14. And then we'll consider balloting 4 and 6 and 22-23. But we will continue talks with Vista and West Branch. So here's a little bit about West Branch. It's the one that's going up first. It's fountain stuff, And 10-year planned fountain project outline. In 21-22, some tablet feeders for $3,920. 23-24, some more tablet feeders for $6,000. The 39-20 is for one side. It's the reflection fountain and then the step fountain. Fountain 24-25 fountain display pumps and motors for $78,000. 24-25 sand filters for $16,000. 25-26 again tablet feeders for $5,600. In 25-26 recoating of the step fountain for $225,000. 25-26 display pumps and motors for $16,400, and 25-26 sand filters for $6,800. And once again, when I met with the board for Travari, I explained all this too and showed them the different projects. And then here's the annual operating costs for just the fountains. The maintenance contract for the step fountain each year is $19,164. Reflections fountain is $17,904. PG&E is $77,000. Maintenance equipment repairs and supplies is $4,800. And the water budget, which includes fountains and all the landscaping for West Branch, is our budget is $70,000. And once again, as I said, we started discussions with the HOAs. So steps taken annually by the City Council: adopt a resolution describing new improvements and ordering the preparation and filing of the engineer's report. That was on March 23rd. That's been complete. Approve the engineer's report and adopt resolution of intention to levy and collect assessments and setting a public hearing. That's tomorrow night. And conduct a public hearing to adopt a resolution confirming the diagram and assessments and leveling the assessments. Levy, sorry, May 25th. And that should do it. Any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
You good? Thank you.
I'm wondering if you've ever thought about just establishing a fountain fund, which kind of, it seems like fountains are quite expensive. I don't know, Scott, in the past, have you guys ever thought about that, where funding goes specifically for the fountains?
Well, you always got to have a funding source.
Right.
Since the fountains, that fountain was established in that landscape and lighting zone. I don't know where you would get the money. It would change the finance structure. I don't know that it's a new source of funds to fund fountain maintenance. The CSA pays for the one out on Bollinger, the pretty one out on Bollinger.
Yep.
We tore out the one at Canyon Lakes down on Alcosta and Bollinger,
yeah,
because the costs were burdensome, not just to the city, but to the HOA and the landscape and lighting district down there. So I don't know, if you know of a new source of money, you could do that, but beyond that, I don't know.
I mean, if we spread it across the city, how would
now
that?
you're asking people that live in different parts of the city to pay the bill for that landscape and lighting zone.
Yeah, now the way I'm thinking of, the fountains, it's like, the way I see the fountains are everybody in the city is benefiting from, in the beautification of the city. I don't know, just something,
that would take
that
a vote, I believe, like if you're, am I right?
to make it like,
I think what council members, as far as discussing, we really do have a fund. Those funds are the landscape and lighting districts that are already established. So that if you're in a district that has a fountain in it, that fountain is contemplated within that district, as Sean just mentioned in the last one. That's the required funding in order to raise those for any of the underfunded districts. That would require a vote of that district. And so it is, I understand exactly what you're saying about a citywide fund, but each fountain, if it's in a district, is contemplated within the district for maintenance and replacement ultimately and things like that.
yeah. So what I'm thinking is, like, if we run out of money to maintain those fountains, and the people don't vote to pay towards it, that means you end up shutting down the fountain or something. If there's no money, there's going to be no fountain. So Scott, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, if you look deep into some of the zones, you will see that the city does make a contribution to some of the zones.
Okay.
So the engineer's report would identify a zone and the city contribution and that landscape and lighting zone contribution based upon some formulas. Robin, can you, or Sean?
Yeah, I was just gonna chime in on that. The city-wide zone, zone 2, pays for 30% of the cost. So
Okay.
all of the fountains have been distributed that way because
Okay.
they're on arterials to pay for that broader benefit.
All right. Thank you. I'm just, yeah, my concern was, if they just decide not to pay towards it, and in essence, it's kind of, these are features in our city which make it beautiful as well. And so,
If you look at, well, I'm in my particular case, I'm looking on packet page 27. Okay? Packet page 27 is zone 4, Vista San Ramon. And if you look on the left-hand side of the page, you'll see revenues and expenditures. And if you go down, you'll see that the city transfer from citywide 30% share of arterial. So the city is contributing 30% to, projects and maintenance of those districts that have broad frontage on arterials, such as Crow Canyon, Alcosta, Bollinger, so that those stretches do get some city funding. They aren't 100% funded by that particular neighborhood.
well, thank you. That makes sense. All right. So do we recommend this to move to council, or do we approve this today?
Recommended for council approval.
All right. If you move it, I'll second, and
There we go.
there we go. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Right. 5.4, update of the Preserve Landscape and Lighting Assessment District. Staff report by Sean Anderson. You're on again.
Well, actually, I'm going to take this one.
Okay.
It's quite a bit different from what Sean was just talking about. As I think you're aware, when the Faria Preserve project was approved, it was conditioned to form a new landscaping district, which is what I'm discussing here. Currently, the city has not accepted any of the improvements in that landscaping district. So we're still working off the basis of the original engineer's report and making adjustments accordingly. So I've just quickly summarized those in this table. So as Sean was mentioning, we have the maximum allowable assessment, which is our cap. In the Faria Preserve, that is also adjusted by inflation or a minimum of 2%. So that is the number I'm showing at the top of this table here, that we are proposing to adjust the assessment cap for the preserve to $381.13 as allowable. We've then gone through a calculation based on the original engineer's report and the itemized costs for maintenance in that district. And then we have adjusted that for inflation as described in the report. So that's the numbers that I have summarized in this table below for full year cost. Now, the developer has told us that they plan to turn over some improvements, and we had in fact anticipated that they would turn over some this year. So we're still anticipating that'll happen. They've also talked about the turnovers that might happen next year. So for the purpose of this forecast, we have assumed that we will have approximately 50% of the improvements for the entire year and 100% of the improvements for half the year, for an overall average of about 75% of the maintenance will fall to our responsibility next fiscal year. So we've simply adjusted the itemized cost by a factor of 0.75 to predict what our anticipated costs for maintenance of FRIA will be. We subtract from that a general benefit, which is the benefit that accrues to all residents who happen to drive up by FRIA and use the park or whatever, and added the administrative costs. That gives us our total anticipated cost for next year at about $114,000. It's expected that there will be about 406 assessment units available for assessment at the beginning of the year. So from that, we calculate the total assessment at $282.07 per unit. So that is what we are proposing to assess, which is substantially under the assessment cap. Right now, we're expecting to have a reserve of about $206,000 at the end of this fiscal year. Of that, about $55,000 will go to long-term replacement costs. So we're already building reserve to replace the things that have already been put in the ground. That leaves a available reserve of about $150,000 should our calculations prove remiss, if the developer turns over things for our maintenance more rapidly than expected, or if there's fewer units for assessment, or if the original engineer's calculations on what was expected to happen there all proved to be somewhat wrong. We have plenty of reserve to be able to handle that through the next year. With that, do you have any questions or comments?
I don't.
Well, I'm good. That's.
Thank you.
I like the structure of that one, where it's a 2% minimum. The cap is raised by a going forward, so we won't run into the problem we've got with these units that are these zones that are going to be underfunded, and we end up turning off fountains or letting the landscape go looking lousy.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So next we have item 5.5, draft 5-year capital improvement program 2021-20 to 26. Staff report by Maria Ferner, Public Works Director.
Hi, good afternoon, committee
Hi,
members.
Maria.
I will share my
Hello.
screen. Are you able to see the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet? Okay, whoops. Oh, I guess I need to share first, sorry. All right.
Right?
That helps. I apologize, hang on one second. All right, share.
There we go.
Okay.
Now, can you hit the button to enlarge it to full screen?
And okay, how's that?
Same.
Same?
Yep. There we go.
Now, there it works.
We're good? All right. Let me start from the beginning. Okay. Well, I'm happy to be presenting to you the 2021-22 capital budget and the 5-year 2021-26 capital improvement program. And what I'll be presenting today are a number of things. I'll go through the review process, the new CIPs being introduced into the CIP, what the capital budget looks like for next year, the 5-year CIP, and I'll go through some project highlights for the next fiscal year. Just highlight the infrastructure maintenance fund update, the unfunded CIPs, and then the next steps. We've completed some of our review process already. It was presented to the council at their budget workshop on April 13th. The unfunded CIP portion was initially shown to the council. Following April 14th, we went to the Parks Commission and the Parks and Facilities portion of the CIP was presented. The Transportation Advisory Committee received the report on the circulation and signals on April 15th. And the Infrastructure Committee received the report on the 5-year pavement management plan on April 19th. Following the committee meeting today, we'll be presenting this to the Planning Commission for approval of the general plan conformance. And then in May, we'll be going back to the Infrastructure Committee and presenting the Doherty Valley Tree Planting Annual Work Plan, as well as an update on the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund. The full council will be receiving the draft 5-year CIP on May 11th, with council approval on May 25th. So in our presentation to the various committees and commission, the Parks Commission recommended adding the cricket field installation, and I'll talk about that project a little bit later in the presentation. They also recommended the addition of shade structure installation using Proposition 68 funding, as well as continuing to evaluate and install structures throughout city parks. They inquired about the renovation of the Crow Canyon Gardens, as well as the Cal High tennis courts and lighting, and if possible, to add lighting on the courts that don't currently have lights. At the TAC committee, they inquired about the bicycle pedestrian enhancements and citywide intelligent transportation system proposed improvements and agreed to move the projects forward. And for the Infrastructure Committee, the 5-year pavement management plan was presented, and the committee recommended looking at setting a policy to maintain a PCI minimum and continue to look at other funding to maintain the city's average PCI. So looking at the CIP projects introduced into the 5-year CIP, there are a total of 9, which this slide shows along with their cost associated with each project. And I'll go through each one individually. The first one is the cricket field installation in the parks category for $300,000. It is programmed for fiscal year 21-22 for $25,000 for design, funding coming from the Park Development Fund. Beyond 5 years, we have $275,000 in unidentified funding. And what we've done is allocated the $25,000 to help determine the locations of the location of where the cricket pitch could be installed, and also doing the design of that at that location that is chosen. So what we would be doing is converting an existing sports field to a dedicated cricket field and pitch to include batting cages and storage for co-sponsored cricket pitch league events. We have looked at some locations preliminarily at the Sports Park, East Branch, and Hidden Valley. Fostoria Way Costco driveway traffic signal has been added to the CIP for fiscal year 21-22. And this is a condition of approval for the Costco gas station. It is in the signals category for $631,000, and it will install a traffic signal and interconnection at the intersection of Fostoria and the new Costco gas station driveway. Another condition of approval by the City Walk developer is the Iron Horse Middle School field replacement. So this has been added beyond 5 years in the park category for $2.6 million. It will replace one of the existing fields at Iron Horse Trail Middle School with a synthetic field. And the developer will begin design and construction of the project when the 1,250th building permit is issued. Another new project is Pavement Management 2026, added in the 5th year of the CIP in the circulation category. Total cost is $4.6 million, funded by Gas Tax Measure J, as well as Refuse Vehicle Impact Fee Fund. And the projects that were presented to the Infrastructure Committee, this is consistent with that, following the critical point assessment methodology. Also added in the 5th year is our stopgap program under the circulation category for $400,000. This is a 2-year project, and this will supplement the annual pavement management repair plan. The Joint Public Safety Complex was added into the 5-year CIP in the facilities category for $26.8 million. The alternative funding is from the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District. And as you know, we'll be renovating the existing 2401 permit and police department into a joint public safety complex for PD and the fire district administration, as well as construct a new 911 emergency dispatch and emergency operations center. We're actually holding our pre-construction meeting tomorrow, so construction will begin shortly after that. Added in the 5th year is the sidewalk repairs, funded by gas tax and Measure J for $250,000. Added in the 5th year to provide repair and maintenance required on sidewalks, curbs, and gutters that are identified as tripping potentials or meeting ADA compliance. And this project is the Sunrise Ridge Park. This is part of the preserve development for $8.75 million, programmed for 21-22. This project has started construction. It adds 12.9 acres of park and 0.7 acres of rose garden south of Faria Preserve Parkway. And some of the amenities will include play areas, baseball and soccer fields, sports parks, sports courts for basketball and bocce ball and tennis, and park restrooms. So construction, as I said, is underway, and it's scheduled to be completed at the beginning of fiscal year 22-23. And then we have the traffic impact mitigation fee study update. It's time to update this study. The last time it was updated was in 2016. So we are proposing this project for 21-22 for $80,000 funded by the Traffic Improvement Fund. The reason we would like to update it is we would like it to be consistent with the 2040 General Plan update, the Bicycle Master Plan, and our Intelligent Transportation System Master Plan. So those are all the projects. Any questions on those? Okay. So now going to the capital budget for 21-22. We have a total of 73 projects that are either active, they're new, or scheduled for 21-22 for a total of $53 million. And I just have a comparison of last year's, which was 69 projects for $41.65 million revised. When you look at the projects by category, you see that the majority of the funding is under facilities, mostly because of the public safety complex. Then we have circulation and parks that have the expenditures in those particular categories. Looking at graphically, again, facilities for $29.4 million. Actually, if you remove the public safety complex, the actual costs would be $2.4 million, just for comparison purposes. Again, parks, which is $9.78 million, that does include the Sunrise Ridge Park. So minus that, it's about $1 million of funding in that parks category. When you look at the expenditures by funding source, the majority of the funding is an alternative funding. I have a separate slide for that. And then we have our certificate of participation for $1.6 million. Developer funded, I mentioned quite a few developer funded projects. Our gas tax Measure J is mostly for the pavement management. Our infrastructure maintenance fund for $1.66 million. And SEC JIPA is for our Crow Canyon Road widening project. And then the unidentified funds, I have a slide to review those projects later in the presentation.
Maria?
Yes?
Maybe it's coming out of infrastructure maintenance fund, but the Dougherty Station upgrades, is that in infrastructure maintenance fund?
That's actually certificate of participation, and I have that in later on in the presentation.
Okay.
Oops. So okay, capital budget. This is looking at it graphically, the numbers that I just presented in the previous slide. So looking at The alternative funding, 28.6 million. 55,000 is going towards the city facilities floor covering replacement. That is the Iron Horse Gym, the hardwood floor that we are replacing. So the school district will be paying for half of that. The marquee installation, those are transit sales revenues for $10,000, and that will go towards the marquee that we will be installing this fiscal year. So we had a prior year allocation of 50,000 plus this. So that will be all going towards the marquee. Pavement management, the refuse vehicle impact fee for 1.55 million. I've mentioned the public safety complex, and then shade structure improvements. We have the Proposition 68 grant for 177,592. Looking at the certificate of participation for fiscal year 21-22, we are requesting an allocation of a total of 1.65 million. 650,000 is for the bike network improvements and enhancements, and 1 million is for the Doherty Station Community Center and library renovations. So $500,000 has already been allocated for the Doherty Station, and that is for design. We are planning to start design this summer to develop the scope of work associated with the community center as well as the library. And then we anticipate construction starting in the fall, actually not the fall, beginning of 2022.
How much for design?
We put aside 500,000, but that was
500,000 for design?
Well, that's just to start it. So whatever we don't use there, we don't have a contract yet with a designer. That is just the money to get the project started.
$500,000 for design? I just find that
that's not all going to go to design. It's just a portion that we allocated to get the project started.
I would expect our design contract to be substantially less than $500,000. Okay.
It will.
Thank you.
I wanted to include a slide of the COP as it's been performing since inception. So I hope you were able to see this, but we determined about 23.54 million when we came up with the projects that would be funded by the COP. And as we progressed through the mid-year of 1920, through 1920, 2021, and the appropriations for 21-22, we will have encumbered 22.34 million. So that would leave 1.67 million available still in the certificate of participation. So some of these projects are still underway. Some of them have not started. So what the actuals will adjust the encumbrances and the actuals accordingly.
Okay, the line labeled Doherty Station Community Center Library, you have 2.5 million in the cost estimate, but going across you only have 1.5 million. Can you?
Yes, so the reason for that is 1 million was set aside for parking lot improvements. Back in 2019, there were discussions about redoing all of the parking lot for the Doherty Station Community Center. Since then, there have been discussions of not using the certificate of participation funding to do that, nor the need. So right now that money is not put into that project, but it's still available if that project or any other project would want to use that million that was originally for that project, for the parking.
The second line, City Hall reconfiguration, says aside $3 million. How close to $3 million is that project?
I would say we're probably within 200,000.
Above or below?
Below.
Okay. Checking. Okay. All right. So when that's all done, there might be a little bit of money coming back into the fund.
There may be, yes.
Not a lot. I mean, it's okay. The comprehensive street camera, is that project about closed out?
It is, I think all the purchases are completed, and that is the amount for the street camera installations. So that's an actual.
Okay. The community center, one community center renovation, 3.3 million or 3.1 million, and you've appropriated 2.9. How's that? Is that closed out at 2.9?
It is not closed out because the remaining money is for the exterior renovations. Yeah.
Anything else on this page I should know about?
I don't think so. I think everything that we have encumbered is going to be spent pretty close to the cost. Of course, the Bollinger Canyon Road Iron Horse Trail pedestrian crossing has those, the allocations that where some of it is reappropriated to pavement management. So it's the reappropriations happening with that one. But for the most part, it is what it is.
And we've submitted through Townsend Associates to the federal government that's a project that might get some federal funds. If we were to get some federal funds through the infrastructure, let's say that there is $1 million that comes back to us, which is for talking purposes. Does that $1 million in effect go mean that this would then, that line would then go to 5.5? If we were to get them, who gets the $1 million? Where is it?
Is that a real number or?
No. I've just made up something. Let's say that through, Congressman Swalwell's office, he manages to get that put on the list of projects that gets funded with the federal infrastructure. Let's just say there's $1 million. Does it reduce the contribution by OBAG? Does it reduce the contribution by some other entity, or does that reduce our contribution if we got that money? Do you know?
Well, it's complicated. Well, Robin can step in and talk about, because it's such a complicated money funding source for this project. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, I think that is the right answer right there, Maria. The answer is it depends on what strings are attached in terms of matching funds and where it has to come from. I would imagine that assuming our requirements for money are not increasing on that project, then it would come as a reduction in our STIP funding, and therefore a reduction in the essentially payback that we need to make from our Measure J funds.
Okay,
that's the most likely.
Okay, yeah, I'm not asking for certainty. I'm just asking for what's the likely path should there be some funds. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So moving on to the 5-year CIP, our 5-year has 133 projects for 101 million, with the 9 new projects incorporated. And then looking at it by year, we have the first year at 53.04 million, followed by an average of about 12 million over the next 4 years.
And majority of that funding this year is coming from external sources as well, right? Or a good chunk, right?
Yes, that's correct. So as you can see, the expenditures by category, as usual, it is mostly in the circulation. Circulation includes El Costa, pavement rehabilitation, the Bollinger Canyon Iron Horse Trail overcrossing, and the Crow Canyon widening, plus all of our pavement management projects. Facilities, again, is the public safety complex, and the remaining is the Doherty Station Community Center and the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund type projects, and forced home form structures. So looking at the expenditures by funding source, as you can see, the alternative funding, that's a lot of the external funding that was just mentioned at 35.23 million. And then our typical funding source is that we get most of it is gas tax and Measure J for 18.71 million. We have our unfunded, which includes the Intelligent Transportation System for 9.5 million and the Doherty Valley trees for 5 million, or 1 million each year. Okay, so we revise the CIP every year, and it will look a little different from the previous year based on changes relative to current development projects and projections such as City Center, the Free Preserve, City Walk, and Chang. It's also based on the funding availability, so we reprioritize based on the funding, any changes in project priorities and project scope. And we continue to look at projects and buildings as a whole at one time, as opposed to doing it in piecemeal. And that seems to have been successful because it has minimized the disruption to the public, increased cost efficiencies, as well as giving that opportunity to give a building the facelift and the re-grand opening when we finish each building renovation. So starting with circulation, CIP highlights, we have pavement management. I've already talked a little bit about that. So fiscal year 21-22, the budget is 4.86 million. The slide lists all the various streets associated with pavement management 2021. We have the El Costa Boulevard rehab from Veracruz to Olympia Fields construction starting in June. The funding source is gas tax and Measure J, as well as 1.17 million from the OBAG grant. Then we have this presentation that was given to the Infrastructure Committee. We shared with them that we would be maintaining a PCI of 75 for our 5-year outlook, and our current PCI is 78. Yes?
I am not in favor of changing the policy to maintain a PCI of 75. The council voted to maintain a PCI of 78. I think that should continue to be our goal. I recognize that the funding that we have in the out years does not support that, but in many ways, it's kind of like looking at the 5-year budget. The out year, the 5th year always looks horrible. But the current year and the next year generally look okay. So I don't want, this may be one of those things where you say, if you say it often enough, it becomes fact. And I don't want 75 to be, oh, good, we don't have to put so much money into it. We don't have to work so hard. I am not in favor of maintaining a PCI of 75. I think our goal needs to continue to be 78.
Okay. So to clarify this particular bullet, when I say maintain PCI of 75, that is what the PCI will be in 5 years. So it's not, however, the Infrastructure Committee did talk about setting a minimum PCI target and 75 was discussed, and 75 to 78 was discussed. So we're at the very preliminary discussions on setting a policy, and we'll continue to talk through that. So that was what was discussed at the Infrastructure Committee.
I realize that. I spoke briefly with Mark Armstrong, and like I said, if I look at like the 5-year operating budget, the 5th year always looks horrible. And the same thing is true of the PCI. The 5th year always looks horrible. And I admire what you and Robin and Mustafa before him did to help us maintain the higher amount by getting grant funding and things like that. But we've been successful in getting funding to help us maintain a 78. So do not want 75 to become what the norm, the acceptable.
If I can just jump in here, very valid statements. However, I don't want to jump across two different meetings. This is certainly something we can bring to the council as a whole to have a discussion.
So what's the difference between 75 and 78? Is there, or maybe I could get together with you one-on-one, get a lesson on the PCI.
Yeah, we would be happy to do that.
Yeah.
It's a
Maybe Scott can give me a.
The problem becomes it's a citywide average. And if you take a citywide average, if it was just one street going from 78 to 75, that's not a real big deal. That happens every year, that streets typically go down 2, sometimes 3 points in a given year. But if you do that on a citywide basis with thousands, well, let's see, hundreds and hundreds of miles, lane miles, that's a substantial drop in the quality of our streets. We're currently in the top about 15% in the Bay Area. I know we're not quite the top 10%, but the last time I saw a listing, it showed us just below the 10%, the top of the list. We were just below the 10% level. And I just don't want to see us drop substantially. To me, that's a very bad sign of neglect.
So this next slide, we talk about the funding for pavement management. As you know, in fiscal year 17-18, it was approved for the refuse vehicle impact fee, and we started collecting in 2018. So this slide shows the funding by year, what we anticipate to receive. Another funding, the council approved $9.2 million loan agreement with CCTA secured by Measure J annual payments to provide additional cash flow for the Bollinger Canyon Road Iron Ore Trail overcrossing in November 2020. So Robin and his staff worked on a payment management plan that showed the Measure J funding not coming in, and trying to make that work following our critical point assessment methodology. Okay, Iron Horse Trail pedestrian overcrossing at Bollinger. Total project cost is $21 million, various funding sources, and it continues to be a council priority. The agreement with CCTA for design and construction support has been executed, and they are in full swing of design. Robin is taking the lead with CCTA and the consultants to work through the various decision points. So we do have the design consultant and a cost estimator on board. We anticipate the design to be complete by January 2022. We plan on, we're trying to award and start construction the early part of 2022 with about a year and a half of construction duration.
Do you know why it's taking them that long to do the design? I was hoping we'd get started this summer or something.
Oh, I would actually describe this as a very rapid design.
Okay.
It's quite quick.
Okay.
Yeah, I think right now we are at 35% plan submittal. Is that correct?
Correct. We're at 35% plans. We're reviewing those now. So actually, this is a very rapid process, especially for a custom design bridge, which this is. And we'll see some further time savings, hopefully, in a direct transition from the construction manager to general contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And we keep getting the question when we thought the bridge was coming up, like now, tomorrow.
Wants it.
So.
Well, one of the decisions that we did make is to go with a design build type of a situation as opposed to a design bid build. Otherwise, we would have added a lot more time to the project. So it takes a lot more complex coordination, but it does provide a little bit of a less amount of time by doing the process that Robin and CCTA are following.
I recognize there's a little more upfront time, but once you've gone past that, you can start on some utility relocations and things like that on a faster pace, as I understand it.
Okay, Crow Canyon Road widening. This is the project from El Costa to Doherty Road. The project total cost is about 20 million. And we've also included other CIP projects in our capital improvement program that touch this project as well. So we're doing it all in one fell swoop. So the construction is broken up into 2 phases. We have already started the utility relocation aspect with the design of the actual widening being completed fairly soon with, I think we anticipate construction starting in September. So the limits of this phase 1 work is from El Costa to St. George, and then phase 2 is beyond 5 years from St. George to Doherty Road. Phase 1 is approximately $12 million, and construction is anticipated to be about a year and a half. And then we'll be adding 2 to 3. We'll be going from 2 lanes to 3 lanes in each direction.
Maria, are we baking in our bike plan as part of this?
Yes, we are. We actually, our very first slide that we had does show the bike lane. It's a class 4, is that right, Robin? Where it has a separated a separation between the lane and the bike lane.
Yes, it'll be separated with a buffer, a painted buffer.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, where am I? Okay, so speaking of bicycles, the citywide bicycle network improvements and enhancements. The funding is from our COP debt funding. So this first fiscal year, we've installed bicycle improvements on Montevideo Drive from San Ramon Valley Boulevard to El Costa. And we started the design on improvements on Bollinger from Canyon Lakes to Doherty Road South, as well as Crow Canyon Road to San Ramon Valley Boulevard. And then we also started the design on Doherty Road from Bollinger Canyon Road North to Bollinger Canyon Road South. So 21-22, we will be installing those improvements on Bollinger and Doherty Road, working on those. The other point is I wanted to make is that with pavement management, we are trying to install green bike lanes, bike lane improvements when we're doing pavement management where it's feasible. So trying to maximize the funding so we can get them both put in at the same time. Okay, drainage. So citywide drainage infrastructure repairs, we did receive COP funding in the amount of 500,000 last fiscal year. And as Robin mentioned previously, we also received a grant for 80,000, and that grant is to help us with the drainage infrastructure inventory and study. We did complete sediment removal on Norris Creek, and we have some more that we've identified for next fiscal year. We did some drainage swale improvements along South San Ramon Creek. So next fiscal year, we're doing some access road improvements on South San Ramon Creek. And we have a culvert repair at Deerwood Mill Creek. The size is 36 inches in diameter, and that's the phase 2 portion. So the total amount of work is approximately 600,000. In the facility category, we have a number of things going on here. So the Doherty Station Community Center library renovation, I mentioned the schedule for that. San Ramon Community Center renovation, as I mentioned, so the interior is complete. We're working on the exterior. So all that funding is prior year allocation, and we'll start that process this summer. Let's see, aquatics equipment and replacement. We have a number of items for replacement at the San Ramon Olympic Pool and the Doherty Valley Aquatic Center. And then we have our city facilities floor covering for $111,000. I mentioned that was the Iron Horse Gym. HVAC repairs for $220,000. So we have duct cleaning at various facilities, and we also have an HVAC repair and assessment that is built into those costs. We don't have anything scheduled for the roof covering, but the $25,000 is for emergency repairs if any come up. As far as exterior painting and sealing, the exterior is for the building at SROP, stucco painting, and then we have exterior work for the San Ramon Service Center. The interior amenities, a big bulk of that is at the El Costa Senior and Community Center, the partition walls in the garden room, I believe. We also have the Mecco shades in the Ridge Room at Doherty Station Community Center, and then some work at the San Ramon Service Center. So Forestone Farm structures, we have a lot of painting that we have scheduled there at the outbuilding painting of the barn, the granary, and the fuel shed. And we'll also be doing some work on the grotto. And then I've already talked about the marquee installation at the Transit Center. For landscaping, we have centralized irrigation system upgrades, our street landscape planting renovation, for $250,000, our Doherty Valley Tree Management Program for $1 million. We will be presenting this to the Infrastructure Committee in May and requesting funding in the amount of $1 million, and improvements and repairs in the various landscaping and lighting zones, as Sean presented earlier. In the category of other, we have our sidewalk repairs in 22-23 that will be starting up next year. For the parks category, so we have a number of items in the parks, amenities, replacements, and improvements. At various parks, we have barbecues, benches, drinking fountains, picnic tables, and 5-bar surfacing. We also have the basketball court surfacing at Limerick Park and tennis court windscreens at Central Park and Soyan Park. We have the fountain repairs and replacements. That is specifically for the Bollinger Fountain. We will be replacing the lighting there to LED. We actually presented that last fiscal year, but delayed it due to funding purposes. Irrigation booster pump installation for $125,000. Ring rock fountain conversion at Central Park. Those are prior year funding allocations, but that is a project that is under construction. We actually mobilized just recently with the pergola ordered and on its way soon. So that is going to be completed later this summer. The last bullet is San Catania Creek Park, or the woodlot. That was in the CIP previously, but we have reworked it based on it being a condition approval for the City Walk development. With that project, the developer will begin design and construction of the project with the 450th building permit issued, and that was added in fiscal year 24-25. A project to highlight is the Crow Canyon Gardens facilities improvement for $35,000. We've added that for fiscal year 21-22. At the policy committee meeting on February 24th, staff was directed to gather cost estimates for renovation of portions of the mud building and renovating that. April 28th, staff will be reporting back to the policy committee to discuss the consultant cost proposals and analysis for input and direction. So what we have included in the CIP is $35,000, plus we have funding from existing project funds to allocate towards the analysis, and then staff will be presenting this to the City Council once the scope and cost and timing of the project have been determined. The other project to highlight under the parks category is the shade structure improvements for $222,440. Prop 68 funding is for $177,952. So a local match is needed in the amount of $44,488. This was recommended by the Parks Commission at the April 14th meeting. Staff will be finalizing costs and locations. Some preliminary locations have been identified, and installation will happen in 21-22 with the receiving of the Prop 68 funding. Okay, moving on to signals, we have our Bollinger Canyon and Crow Canyon Roads traffic signals, ATSPM. That is scheduled for completion this summer, 2021. And that system will be implemented at 43 intersections, and 20 bike detection systems will be installed. And this will improve travel time by monitoring and evaluating corridor traffic signal performance. And if you haven't had a chance, we are sprucing up our traffic operations center at City Hall. And so all these different projects that we have going on for traffic is coming to fruition, and we really hope you can stop by sometime in the near future and just really check out what we are able to observe and monitor and be able to make changes in our operating center. The citywide intelligent transportation system upgrade, the conduit installation by MCE Verizon is being performed for fiber work in locations identified by the master plan. The COP funded work on Bollinger Canyon Road from Talavera Drive to Doherty Road for fiber installation. And we are continuing to make that connection of the gap for the downtown area on Bollinger Canyon Road. And then last, for signals, we have our signal improvements and enhancements. This is funded by the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund, and this will be to upgrade any controllers, conflict monitors, battery backup units, vehicle detector units, Opticom preempt units, radar speed display signs, etc. So looking at our funding and expenditure projections, all the funds are balanced. Yes.
Are we prepared going forward with PSPS events, because those tend to affect our traffic signals along with everything else, and having traffic signals go dark is a bad thing.
Yes, and that will, this system that we have in place will definitely help. That, in addition to the purchase of our generators for our priority intersections, we're able to cover that.
Thank you.
So the Infrastructure Maintenance Fund, we are proposing a contribution of $1.5 million for fiscal year 21-22, and looking out over a 5-year period, we also look at a $1.5 million contribution to keep the fund positive. This will be presented to the Infrastructure Committee in detail at the May Infrastructure Committee meeting. The Park Development Fund is also doing fine as long as the Aspen Wood fees are received. We anticipate those to come in at the end of this fiscal year or early next fiscal year. So this slide shows of all of our unfunded CIPs or funded by the Doherty Valley CSA. So we have our Doherty Valley Tree Management Program for $1 million. Our centralized irrigation system upgrades funded by the Doherty Valley CSA for $67,000. Our irrigation booster pump installation for $85,000. The fountain repairs and replacements, that's the Bollinger fountain lighting for $44,000. The $44,488 is the unfunded portion of the shade structure improvement, the local match that is needed for Prop 68. And then street landscape planting renovation for $250,000 funded by the Doherty Valley CSA. And so the total amount is $1.49 million.
You need to emphasize that that 44,000 is the 44,488 is the matching fund portion that goes with the 170 something $1,000. So that if we don't spend the 44,488, we don't get the 177. People need to make that connection that that's a matching piece that goes with that grant.
Okay, will do. So the next steps, we have the infrastructure committee meeting in May, the date to be determined, planning commission to review the 5-year CIP for general plan conformance. I'll be presenting the 5-year CIP at the council budget workshop on May 11th with council adoption of the budget to include the capital budget on May 25th. So that concludes my presentation. Do you have any additional questions?
So just, I don't know, question, comment. I know Iron Horse Trail was a priority for the parks master plan. I don't see anything besides the overcrossing there. Are we doing anything? Are we expecting to do anything on the Iron Horse Trail in the next 5 years, or that's not something that Parks has talked about?
Well, I know that there is a regional effort. We have our Iron Horse corridor in the study, and there are some items that are identified there. There is nothing right now in the CIP specifically identified, but we continue to keep an eye on grants or other specific proposals related to the Iron Horse Trail.
Because I think as we're going to build the overcrossing as well, right, we're probably going to want to, leading up to it, would be a good idea to, I don't know, structures, trees and things. We keep talking about it, but I don't know, haven't seen anything. So, and if there's an opportunity, again, you know, if there's a CIP, then I understand if there's an opportunity comes, we can ask for those funds as well.
Okay.
It was the #1 priority in the Parks master plan. So
yeah,
hopefully we can make some progress there. I move we send this to the full council according to the schedule you've proposed, and the infrastructure committee and others.
Okay.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
All right, on to 5.6, City of San Ramon Quarterly Investment Report, period ending March 31st, 2021, report by Candace Daniels, Finance Division Manager.
Good afternoon, everyone. You have before you the quarterly investment report for the period ending March 31st, 2021. It's a requirement of state law that the report be reviewed at least on a quarterly basis. The March 31st investment report is prepared by our investment advisors, FHN Financial Main Street Advisors. For our city's bank account with JP Morgan Chase, as of March 31st, we had a balance of 11.7 million, which is used for daily city operations. The total funds in the portfolio managed by FHN at March 31st was 70.5 million at book value, which consisted of 46.9 million in federal agency securities, 2 million in treasury securities, 3.1 million in supranationals, 4.8 million in commercial paper, 7 million in corporate notes, 5.2 million in FDIC insured CDs, 1.5 million in municipal bonds. The weighted average yields to maturity on investments was 1.39%, and the weighted average days to maturity was 7.17 days, which was 39 days longer than the previous quarter. Interest rates were 17 basis points lower than the previous quarter. We had in our money market 2.3 million, which was 3.03% of the portfolio. We also had 4.6 million invested with LAIF. Investments held with trustees was mainly the 2019 COP balance, which was a total of 4.5 million. 3.6 of that was the 2019 COPs, and we had 900,000 in other trustee accounts. That is all I have. Are there any questions?
I have none. Thank you.
I don't have any either. Thank you, Candace.
Okay, thank you.
On to item number 5.7, quarterly revenue and expenditure reports for the period ending March 31st, 2021. Staff report by Vivian Gong, Senior Financial Analyst.
So I'm going to be filling in for Vivian this time, starting with the quarterly expenditure report. The report is showing that all departments were coming in at budget. So if you refer to the third page of the report, we have a list of the vacancies and unfunded positions. We're showing 8 unfunded positions and 15 vacancies throughout all departments, most of the vacancies being in the police department. Any questions on this report?
I don't. Councilmember.
Last year's third quarter report, but without any money, or with the losses or the missing, sales tax, property transfer tax, transient occupancy tax, all those other things that you showed us in the 5-year financial. So,
right.
All right, Candace. I think.
And you know what? Property tax is doing well now. And I would expect when you talk with our property tax consultants that next year is going to look pretty good as well. As the turnover of houses we're getting 20-25% increase year over year of house values. So houses that have been held for more than 4 or 5 years are all going to show tremendous increase in valuation for our property tax. So that bodes well for next year.
Right. So do you want me to go through the entire revenue report?
No.
Okay.
So are we good on this report?
I got what I need.
All right. So Candace, you're on again 5.8, Public Agency Retirement Services PARS, Pension Stabilization Trust Statement for the period ending March 31st, 2021.
Okay, so you have before you the PARS pension statement for March 31st. We started with a balance of 4.9 million. We had earnings of 42,000, expenses of about 2,400, ending with a balance of 4.9 million. Well, almost 5 million. Are there any questions? This is just an update to let you know how,
We get your report quarterly on this. Is that right?
That's correct.
But the statement we see is a 1-month statement. In the staff report portion, can you give us the ending balance of the prior quarter that goes with the ending balance of this quarter so we can see what the quarter to quarter change is? Because when we see this, all we're getting is the beginning of the month to the end of the month.
I could see if they could do a quarterly statement instead of a monthly statement. So
that's another way to do it, is give us a quarterly statement when you present, or in the staff report, just give us the balance from the end of the prior quarter so we can see that because a 1-month snapshot 4 times a year doesn't help me a lot. Okay.
Okay, I'll definitely keep that in mind for next time.
Yeah, so either a quarterly statement or a little bit more verbiage in the staff report. Okay.
Okay, sure. Any questions?
We're up at 4. We're almost at 5 million. That's going to be very helpful one of these days.
That's correct. Sabina, did you have any questions?
I don't.
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you. And then on to your next report, 5.9, California Employers Retirement Benefit Trust Statement for the period ending March 31st, 2021.
So this is the SERP statement for March 31st. It is showing a quarter to date column and a fiscal year to date. So you started the quarter off at 37 million basically. We had earnings of 31, almost 32 million, administrative assistance of 4,500, investment expense of about 4,300. We're ending with a balance of almost 37 million. So year to date, we've had earnings of 4.2 million for the entire fiscal year. So we've been doing really good throughout the fiscal year, and we have budgeted to contribute 300,000 by the end of the fiscal year. Are there any questions?
Looks good to me.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Candace. All right. Item number 6, committee member comments. Councilmember Perkins, do you have any? Vice Mayor Perkins, do you have any comments?
No, I appreciate getting these reports. Of course, the other one, of course, is the OPEB. That's always of interest. I like to see that. But when do we get OPEB? Do we get
No,
those?
this is the OPEB.
Oh, the 36 million is our OPEB?
Right, this is the
What
OPEB.
was I thinking?
The other one was the pension trust.
Yes, okay. So do we have any idea where this is in relationship to our need?
Status?
37 million. How close is 37 million to our funding need for OPEB?
I think we were close to around 95% funded,
Okay.
but I could check and get back to you on that.
But in the staff report, when you present this, can you give us what the last estimate was? I know you do it every 2 years, and so
Okay.
there's, as we get farther and farther and farther from that 2-year point, the estimate is, diverges. I understand that, but it would be nice to know, is $37 million above, below, close, or are we falling far behind? So I'd like to know what that the OPEB that number is that we owe, or we should have on hand to be one. What does the 100% number look like?
Okay, sure.
Thank
I
you.
can definitely do that.
Okay.
Any other comments?
Nope. Good.
So I had a quick question. I guess we have a budget meeting on May 11th, and the next Finance Committee meeting is May 10th. Do we need a Finance Committee meeting on 10th? We still continue that?
I think there's other items on the Finance Committee agenda. I know there's one for sure that we need.
All right, just want to confirm that. Thank you so much for all the updates. I'm good. No other comments. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.